Welcome to the 23rd episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, still recording from home, we will talk about when is it time to let go of games. I'm Adam.
I'm Matt.
And we're part of Milkcan. We're the company that makes GameFor. GameFor is the app for connecting tabletop gamers. And in this podcast, we like to talk about building community within gamers, which is a little tough right now, admittedly. But we also like to talk about a lot of things that sometimes help you as a gamer kind of think about your gaming and move forward in your gaming, make decisions about your gaming, that kind of stuff. And that's today's topic is going to be talking about, sometimes we end up with too many games, or we end up with games that we maybe don't like as much. And what can you do about that? And how do you kind of navigate that kind of thing? So what have we been doing lately? Like what have you been doing, Matt? Like we've been obviously staying at home.
Yeah, not hanging out with lots of people, that's for sure.
No, that's true.
So I'm not doing a lot of 3D printing, at least not for hobbying. That's all been taken over by face shields. So been printing those nonstop.
You're making like the part that the 3D printer makes is like the headbandy kind of like part.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Prusa, I think, was the one that originally released it for free, and then there's been a few iterations and stuff. So yeah, I've got and with a local group that is originally when I joined the group, they were looking for 1,300 face shields. Now our goal is 3,800, I believe.
Nice.
As we're getting more resources, more people donating, and more need, it keeps going up. But we've, I believe they've now delivered over 750 to local first responders and hospitals and clinic workers and stuff. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's you guys are 3D printing the frame, and then another company is applying the like plastic, kind of clear plastic face shieldy part, and then
that's
sanitizing
the nice thing
them
is
as well.
Yeah, when I first saw this was going on, I'm like, well, that's great, but what do I do with this? So yeah, there's a whole we have spreadsheets that we're keeping track of and drop off spots, and then there's another company that has been donating the plastic and cutting those, and then all those get collected to another couple of individuals who are assembling them and then sanitizing them and then dropping them off, and then they're also keeping track of basically a wait list for people so that they're distributed to who needs them. So
nice. Yeah, I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I did see an article just recently about how there's how like the masks that you generally wear, the ones that go over your face, they have the straps that go behind your ears, and if you're a worker who does that all the time and is working all the time,
it's chafing.
It chafes behind your ears, and so there's now a 3D printed kind of like doohickey that you put. Basically, it basically replaces your ears kind of behind your head. Also, some masks are too big for smaller people.
Yep. We've got a few people with smaller printers that are printing those already.
Oh, good, excellent.
And then the goal is, the plan is that if we do hit, somehow run out of need for the other ones, that we'll be swapping over to those as well. So, yeah, those are being done.
It would be great if we ran out of need, but I don't know when that's going to happen.
Well, hopefully, at least with these, they're washable and re-sterilizable, so they shouldn't be thrown away as often. So.
Because you're printing them not in like a PLA, which is not particularly washable.
Some people are doing PLA because that's all they have access to and are able to set up for printing. Most of us are doing PETG, which is a lot. Could take basically a higher temperature so that could go through a more robust sterilization.
For people that don't know, like PLA is almost like it's like almost biodegradable type plastic, right?
Yeah, there's everybody's got kind of like a slightly different formula, but yeah, pretty much it's kind of even PLA plus can still is still a little bit nebulous on what that is, but yeah, it's a softer plastic, and usually like 140 degrees Celsius you're usually melting it at, so it's not super high temp, but so they're doing they're doing those. I believe they're doing UV light sterilization.
Okay.
Is how they're getting away with that. And then the other ones, the PETG, because they go I'm printing at like 240 Celsius. So those can take a lot higher temps for washing and stuff like that. So
yeah. So I mean, really, if you are out in the if you're out there and you're a 3D printer person and you're thinking about how ways that you can help, maybe look around your local area and see if you can find a group that's working to do this kind of stuff, to build these kinds of devices. I've also heard of people 3D printing ventilator parts and all
Yep.
kinds of stuff like that. The 3D printing uh, community, I think, has really been stepping up in this situation.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And I found out that a filament provider actually is local to me, only like like I don't know, a mile or two away from my house.
Oh wow,
They've been really awesome with basically selling it to us at cost, and they are set up to basically being able to keep up with any kind of load we could ever do. And then we've had local businesses actually donating money. So we're originally providing our filament ourselves, and now companies are even donating the filament just so that people can help out. So yeah,
oh, that's
find
really great. Yeah.
check Facebook. Or Google, or yeah, there's a lot of Twitter. There's a lot of small groups popping up, just because it's a lot easier to manage, kind of more at the community level than it is to try to do like a nationwide effort for for that kind of logistics.
hmm Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. What else have you been doing besides
Oh,
3D printing
yeah. So outside of 3D printing,
parts that save lives?
yeah, just D&D, but that's fun. Still having
Yeah,
fun with that.
doing that online as well, like we
Yep.
talked about in the last episode.
Yep, I will say that Roll20 is becoming, as I'm finding new features that I didn't realize I could do, it is really becoming handy. So I still stand by my comments from last episode that it's not the easiest UX, but it also has a lot of features that and for the basically for free, it's providing a really good substitute for us.
Sure. Well, that's good. That's good to hear.
How
Yeah, I mean,
about
like I
you?
said, if you
Oh
well,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, if you haven't listened to the last episode that we did was about how to play games remotely. Since we all got to kind of stay away from each other for a while. So yeah, that was I think that was episode 22, I believe.
Yeah, and
So yeah, it
I think
was a good idea.
yeah, Steam's got like a tabletop simulator is on sale on Steam right now.
I
Probably is going
think
to be
it's
probably done by
Yeah, I
then.
think the sale might be done by the time that
This
this
goes
goes
there.
live.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it is still, even at full price, I think it's maybe $20.
yeah, and
So
yeah, check your drive-through RPGs, and a lot of those. I mean, there's like Frostgrave was free. Is it still free, or was that just a
I don't know, but Osprey did provide Frostgrave like a PDF for free for a while, and I'm not sure if it's still going currently or not. But
yeah? Some of
there's
the
a lot
three
of game
D
companies that are
yeah
doing some of that stuff with their digital.
yeah some of the 3D printed terrain I've talked about that's now free for the some of the smaller uh, things. So yeah, there's a lot of free stuff right now for people to basically fill up their time. So how have you been
Yeah,
keeping
absolutely.
yourself, Adam?
Well, I've been painting a lot, which is I generally like to do that anyway. But there's a lot of times when I'm thinking to myself, I got to do this, I got this going on, I got all these things, different events and whatnot, and I'm having a hard time finding time to paint. Now I'm not having a hard time finding time to paint. Um, so there's that. Yeah, I'm about to finish the bases on my second Star Breach warband. So Star Breach, I've talked about it, I think, in a couple of the past episodes, a little bit here there. It's a like an indie miniature game, skirmish style game. So it's generally both my war bands for Star Breach are less than 10 models. I think one might be 8 and one's 9 of the two different war bands that I've designed. You can use whatever kind of models you want, and so I kit bashed a bunch of models together. Which kit bashing is when you basically use a bunch of different parts from a bunch of different kits and put them together in different ways. Like I use the head from this guy to put it on that guy, and I use the gun from this one to put it on that, so that the
Right.
model is your own creation a little bit. And so I had kit bashed two complete war bands of, like I said, 8 to 9 figures each, and I had painted up the first group and got them completely finished, and I really liked the way they turned out. And now the second group, I had painted them very simply and then did an enamel wash with my airbrush and then rubbed the enamel off with a piece of cloth and stuff like that. And I really like that overall look and effect. And now they're dry. Enamel takes a little bit longer than regular acrylics, but not nearly as
Oh,
long as oil paints. Oil paints
okay.
take days. Enamels maybe take an hour.
Do you have to do
Um,
anything special when you're drawing? Like any kind of like light or heat or anything like that, or
No,
just kind of?
no, no. Some people will tell you that it's a good idea to put a varnish over your paint job before you put the enamel down to protect the paint from the acrylic paint from the enamel, but I have not found that to be a problem.
Oh,
So
okay.
I've not done it, and I haven't seen any downside to it. I'm not using mainly when I'm rubbing off the paint, the wash, the enamel wash, which gives the model a very grungy kind of look. When I'm doing that, I'm just using a piece of cloth. You can also use mineral spirits or white spirits. And I think in some situations, those
Uh,
spirits can sometimes also like goof up the paint underneath. So if you do a
sure.
lot of that to remove the wash, then I could see you definitely wanting to throw down a varnish before you throw the wash down. But
Yeah, that makes
for me,
sense.
because I'm not really using a lot of chemical to get this stuff off, I do it here and there, little tiny bits, just to like maybe brighten up this one little thing.
Mm,
Anyway, that part all got done this weekend, and then so tonight probably actually I will work on the bases. I do pretty simple basing as far as the paint job is concerned. The sculpting for the bases and putting the little rocks and the pieces of the sand and all that jazz. That's already done. I do that before I prime. So yeah, I'll be doing that. And then I'm going to start another kind of smaller warband for another skirmishy kind of indie game. This one I just got recently. It's called Planet 28, and it is even smaller warbands. You generally run with 4 to 5 models, and that's about it. And it's a very, very indie kind of one man show um, war game that you can get on. I think you can get it on War Games Vault, which is basically the miniatures game version of Drive Through RPG, and on it's available on there. It basically is a free download, but you can pay like it's one of those pay what you want sort of situations. But it's a great little. It's like 16 pages. It's a tiny little PDF, but it's a really
okay.
cool little fun kind of narrative rule set. Um, so yeah, I'm going to be building some special war bands for those. I can still use some of the guys from my other war band.
Right,
There's no
right.
reason I can't. But I just really enjoy kit bashing lately, and then getting
Mm-hmm.
to do cool stuff with them. So
Yeah, you're like
um,
Adam Savage. You're kit bashing lately.
oh yeah, from MythBusters and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then I also finished a piece of terrain that I was working on, 40K, Warhammer 40K. They make there's these buildings called bastions. And I've had a couple of these for years and years and years and years and years, like
Okay.
literally not a decade, but I bet probably at least 7 or 8 years.
Oh
And
wow.
so, yeah. But they just, like they sat for a really long time. And then I don't know, probably 3, 4 years ago, I built them. And then last year I primed them one day, and then they just sat. And so I was like, you know what, I want like something that's going to be a simple, fun, quick project that I can go from like start to finish, even though it's not start to finish because it was already you know built and primed and been sitting
Right.
in my basement for a long time, but it was a relatively quick thing to finish, and
Yeah,
that's
I'm
really
curious
something
with
that's
deliveries slowing down and stuff like that. How many like old projects that are finally going to get finished?
oh,
Like
absolutely, no,
I know
absolutely,
my neighbor. We were talking, our mandatory 6 to 8 feet apart at
sure,
our mailboxes the other day, and he was finally getting to his finishing his master bath, which I rumor has it has been undone for about 2 years now.
yeah,
And
I
yeah,
mean,
his wife was not very happy about it, and so he finally has time to do that. So
yeah, no, it's I know for me, I people talk about the pile of shame that a lot of miniatures folks, have in their hobby rooms or their basements, whatever. Um, I'm just looking at like basically I've just been stockpiling for just such an occasion
yeah,
is what it is. That's the way I
yeah,
look at it.
we were just prepping. We were preppers.
Yeah, I'm a miniature game prepper is what it is. So yeah, it's I it the benefit I think also to trying to find a project that's been sitting, like if you've got a box of models, let's say, and they've already
Hmm.
been sitting there for a long time unbuilt, well that's one thing. But when you've got a project that's been like almost finished or it's halfway done and it's just been sitting, like now is the time when you really need that like I'll quick, work on it for an hour or two and it's finished. And now I get the fun, like endorphin rush of like, hooray, I finished a project. I mean, now
Mm,
is the time when we need those quick wins.
yeah, that's true.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've
So
got some
that's,
big train pieces. I've been waiting for to be warm enough because they're too big for my air gun or airbrush setup. So
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's the other thing too, is the next thing that I've been working on too is I bought these, they're made by a company called Secret Weapon Miniatures, and they are the Terrainscapes tiles, I believe that's what they're called. That's the
Oh yeah,
proper
yeah,
name.
yeah. Yep.
But they're 1 foot by 1 foot, like hard plastic, three-dimensional tiles that you can put together. They're modular. They snap together in different ways, and then you make basically the floor of your miniature gaming board, as opposed to just using like a, like one of those neoprene mats
Right,
or something
right.
like that. And it's got a lot of cool texture and bumpiness and stuff going on. And I already own one that's like a ruined urban streets that I painted up and I've used in my studio for battle reports. And I really like it. So I bought another one before all this kind of went down. And so, again, like you said, with the weather, like today, it's supposed to get up near 60 Fahrenheit. So I
Nice.
might be able to go out and do some priming after work. We will see, but it also might possibly sprinkle. So that's also a bit of a thing. But
Mm.
that's the next thing, is that I want to get those at least primed with a rattle can. I could prime them with my airbrush, but I find priming uh, terrain, especially terrain that other terrain is going to sit on top of. I
Yeah.
really want to use rattle can in that situation, like a spray can,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it sticks even better than airbrush primer does. Like airbrush primer is great for miniatures, but you don't handle or rub things up against the miniatures too frequently. But when
Yeah.
you are working on the base to your, to everything that all your other stuff sits on top of, and your dice get rolled on it and all that kind of jazz, then it becomes kind of an issue. So,
Yep.
yeah, that's why I want to use some good spray, like from a rattle can, that'll stick real well. And then I'll be able to do all the rest of the painting and stuff like that indoors. So,
Nice.
but yeah, that's what I got going on. We've got a question this episode.
Yay.
Do you want to read the question?
Sure. Our
Okay.
question this podcast is from Frederick. He says, "Can you talk about how you organize your hobby space? In particular, how do you arrange things when you are pressed for space? During the pandemic, my workspace and hobby space have become one and the same. I'm hoping for some tips and tricks that may make hobbying easier." So yeah,
I think
they're
it's a
definitely
very good
relevant.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
no, and super relevant to now. That's true. Um, I don't know if I should answer this because I am absolutely terrible at organization in my hobby space. It looks like a giant rodent has been just nesting there. It's really not good.
I've
Um,
I guess I'll start with mine a little bit
Probably a good idea.
because even though I have a dedicated workbench, I don't always get to use my workbench because, say, it's been a busy week or two, and
Hmm.
wife and I want to watch something on the Netflix. Well, if we're gonna hang out together, I'm pretty much not able to do that. Or if like I've recently started, my younger two kids have been painting, so again, my workspace doesn't really work, so I've had to kind of be more mobile.
Yeah.
So what I found was like getting like toolboxes or even like fish tackle boxes or whatever, and basically making like project boxes out of them
Hmm.
have been really nice. Like, so I've got one little box that's got just all of my contrast paints and some brushes, and so I can kind of grab that, and then with my with and then a cup for water, and then I can pretty much do that without having to worry about uh, my wet palette and all that. Um, I've got the wet palettes are nice because they kind of keep everything nice and contained, so that that works well for painting. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and then I've got like I did the same thing with like modeling. Like I've got clippers, files, glue, and then like a little like mat to set down on like a coffee, no, not a coffee table, but like the what are those, like the little folding tables you for doing like for it used to be for like the TV dinners that they used them a lot.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I've
Oh,
just
TV trays.
TV trays. Thank you.
Yep.
Set up
Yep.
one of those, and then I can kind of set everything up, and then maybe assemble a few models that way. So,
Yeah. I mean,
um,
this is when we're talking about hobbying in this situation. This question in general is aimed a little bit more towards the folks who are doing miniatures and such. But that doesn't just mean people who play miniature war games. There's obviously also people who build
yeah,
and paint miniatures for role playing games. whether that's just their own miniature for like their character, or whether they're a DM or they're helping the DM by
Right.
painting goblins and stuff like that.
Or
And
even
also the board game folks.
gaming, yeah, and gaming on the go. I mean, I went from having all my gamers around my table, and me kind of having my end of the table with my screen and everything behind the screen, to now
Mhm.
I've got a computer I need to be on, a microphone, so I've got to kind of adjust how my stuff is. So like my maps, I've got maps, and I've laminated them, and then
Mhm.
I put them into like the mobile phone holders. Reuse them at work to hold our mobile phones kind of at propped angle while we're kind
Yeah.
of working on them. I've used one of those to kind of hold up the map, so I can kind of see that uh, without having to like look down, while I'm navigating the books. And then
Sure.
lots of bookmarks.
Oh yeah,
um,
yeah, no, absolutely.
I've been finding I've been using spreadsheets and stuff a lot more too for tracking things, keeping notes.
Mhm.
Um, iPads are great for that kind of thing. Using like the with a pencil to be able to sketch and write notes, but not take up mounds of notebook paper. I can flip back and forth really quick.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Um,
No, I mean, I think that, and I get, because of my YouTube channel, I get people who post pictures quite frequently, like while they're watching one of my videos, and then I can kind of, it's almost like being able to look into people's hobby space. And
mm,
when Frederick here was talking about the, that their workspace and their hobby space has become kind of the same, become one and the same. The trick is in that a lot of situations, a lot of people work that way. It seems. I see a lot of pictures from people who are sitting and painting in front of a computer at their desk, whether it's a
yeah.
laptop or whether it's their desktop or whatever. And I think that that's got to be, that is, like, I don't work that way. Like, my computer's always in a completely different space from my current hobby space, at least.
Hmm.
But if you kind of need to do both because you're working from home and you're not used to doing that or whatever, I would still try to keep them maybe a little bit away from each other. Back in
Yes.
the apartment I had, because I mean, I honestly see people, and like in the pictures sometimes that they post, I'll see like people with keyboards and there's paint on their keyboard. Like you can
Mm.
tell that like these are being used right on top of each other quite
Yeah,
frequently.
you don't want
And
normal at
there's
all.
nothing wrong with that, but it's it's not great. Um, Old apartment my wife and I used to have before we bought the house was the thing that was great was I had my hobby desk was a 180-degree turn via my office chair to my computer desk. So like I could be at my computer desk and then I could turn 180 degrees and be at my hobby desk and not have to move the chair. A lot of people like to watch Netflix or YouTube or things
Mm.
like that while they're
Yep.
working on building models and things like that. So they're going to, in some situations, that won't work if you want to be able to do both. Or if you're working from home, but also want to be building some models at the same time, potentially. I mean, it's up to you. Um, yeah, that's a tough one, though. I mean, like having
What was that?
both.
You bought that thing, that little like box that like expanded out.
Oh,
The
yeah. I bought a travel box for painting.
Yeah.
That was I'm from England. Frontier War Games, I believe. I think is the name of the company.
Mm.
Something like that. If you want to maybe put that like next to your computer, maybe that would be a way to
Yeah.
kind of
Or
look at
just a
trying to
way to
do
kind
that.
of be able to like pack stuff back up real and take stuff back out a little easier or
Yeah,
faster.
that's very true. I mean, as far as like arranging things, there's a lot of little shelves you can get. If you want to go down that road, there are companies out there that laser cut MDF shelving just for people's like
Hmm.
miniature hobby desks. With little
And you
drawers
could
and little things to hold your paints and all kinds of stuff like that.
Thingiverse has stuff on there too. If you have like a hobby laser printer or like cutter
3D printer,
or
3D
3D
printer.
printer or a
Oh
laser
yeah,
cutter,
or a laser
MDF.
cutter. Good point. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you could do that
That's right.
stuff
Yeah,
even at
Thingiverse
home.
doesn't just do 3D printing, but yeah, there are things you can do. I've seen people buy. I own myself several. They're designed for nail salons, and they are
Yeah, I
clear
have one of
plastic,
those. Yep.
acrylic, like little shelves that you. If you work at a nail salon, then you put all your bottles of nail polish, I guess, in there. But they're also about roughly the same size as the miniature paints.
Hmm.
So those things, you can buy the ones that hang on a wall and are very vertical and don't stick out. You can buy the ones that are a little bit more tiered and they go on a desk. yeah, so there's a lot of different options that way. Sometimes not hobby stores, sorry, hardware stores have got those little, those little drawer units. Like
Hmm.
it's like a big organizer that has tiny little plastic drawers that you would put like screws and
Yeah, yeah,
washers
yeah.
and nuts
Yep.
and bolts
Yeah,
in.
little plastic trays.
Um,
Yeah.
I know my friend Sam, who's a pro painter on Twitch and stuff like that. He has, I think, two of those that are just like he's got one little drawer that's full of gravel or like little pieces of dirt, to put on
Hmm.
bases. He's got another floor that's or little drawer that's just full of like heads wearing helmets, and another one with heads not wearing helmets. Different stuff from kits in the past, because usually in modeling they give you more parts than you need. So um, I ordered some models just recently from overseas, which we'll hopefully get here eventually. And I mentioned them on my live show just recently on this weekend, and someone said that they had received that same one of the same boxes that I ordered, and it's you get like 24 models in the box, but you get, and I don't know if this is true, but that's what the person told me. You also get 192 heads.
Oh my god.
So you have a lot of choices on 24 bodies out of
Yeah.
192. I don't even know why they would do that, but I'm going to
Oh,
have heads for days is what I'm going to have, evidently. So,
yeah.
yeah, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, those are the things, is that if the organization is important, because when you at some point want to kit bash and build something and you go, oh, geez, I really would like to find one of those heads from that thing. If they're, if it's just a bare sprue that's underneath your table somewhere, or it's over on a shelf, or it's in a box that's not marked, you're going to not be able to find it. But if you've gone through and either taken those sprues, put them back in the box and stacked them someplace, or just cut all of the extra parts you don't use off of the sprues and put them in little drawers or little Ziploc baggies or whatever it is you want to use, I think it's not a bad idea. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's little shelves.
And maybe yeah,
Also,
and
cleaning
maybe
frequently helps with
yeah,
organization too.
cleaning. Yeah, keep it
Again, another
clean.
thing I don't do.
And then don't try to do, maybe, if you've got a lot of stuff you do, like if you're doing a full painting process, you know maybe don't have everything brought out at once. So maybe you do more at that same stage than you normally would. Maybe you prime, multiple versus, of uh models, and then all your prime stuff can get put back away. Now bring out,
Hmm.
some of your base paints and stuff like that, and detailing later, and you know all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can kind of do. And I can tell you from, do as I say and don't, not as I do. Um, Cleaning and that kind of stuff, just as a general rule, doing it pretty frequently, either between projects or, some people will do it like every time that they get done for the night or whatever, they will clean everything up. I am not that person. And I don't know that that's completely necessary, especially if you're working on a project that's going to go for a while. I could see definitely kind of cleaning up after a project, depending on how you do your project. Some
I
people
do
have
it
multiple
either
projects running at once.
yeah, I either do it at the end when I'm done for the night, or right before I
Hmm.
start for the day. I kind of prep myself as I'm, and kind of clean up that spot, and kind of go, okay, now everything's kind of organized, and then I feel like I'm more prepared to tackle whatever project I'm heading into. So
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, I hope that we were able to answer your question there, Frederick. And we're going to try to reach out to you, and we're going to, because we read your question on the air, we're going to send you a limited edition po- GameFor Podcast T-shirt. It'll say Matt and Adam read my question on the podcast, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt, something like that. And so we'll get an address from you and a size, and we'll send that stuff to
that way
you.
you can show all
Um,
your friends from your
exactly. Yeah.
window.
Exactly. Take a picture, put it on Instagram, or maybe, yeah, or wave at people outside. That's basically, unfortunately, what we're doing right now. But down the road, if you hold on to the T-shirt for a while, eventually you'll get to go someplace with it. So that'd be good. Um, all right. Well, we should talk about the topic
Yeah.
of today's podcast, which is when is it time to let go of games? Now, that does not mean when is it time to stop gaming. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking
Right.
about
Yeah.
individual games. When is it time to
Right.
like be like, hey,
Like,
you
yeah,
know what I mean?
when you're having problems with the previous question, or if you've got no space, closets are falling out, you can't find the game you're looking for because you have to go through 50 other games to get there.
Yep. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I mean, it's I've got friends who are into board gaming, and I see pictures sometimes, or I've been to their houses and seen the shelves. A lot of people who are serious about board gaming have the shelves, and it's just an astounding, collection of different size boxes and
Oh yeah.
different color boxes, and that nothing's like standardized, obviously, because that's not the way these things work
No, my hobby
usually.
room
But
has I made sure there was lots of shelves put into my hobby room, and then realized I still didn't have enough shelves.
yeah,
So
you rarely ever do, it seems. I don't have enough shelves in the basement by far, and I don't even really play board games. But it's just shelves for all the other stuff. So all
yep.
the other, boxes of models and things like that, and projects to come. Yeah, it's like the issue can become a space issue. The issue can become an organization issue, even to some degree. Sometimes it can become just and at least right now in this kind of current crisis that we're in, it can to some degree become I need extra money,
Yeah.
or that kind of thing
Right.
situation. So we
Right.
wanted to kind of talk about it from a bunch of different angles and see, exactly what is what can be done, how you can do it, what you need to look at, that kind of stuff. I mean, one of the first questions, I guess, is have you replaced any particular games with a newer version? Now, if
Right.
you're a collector, then that probably a lot of this is going to fall on deaf ears to some degree
Yeah, yeah.
because
This
if
is
you're,
definitely not to the collector, but if you you know, have a game that like trying to think of a good uh scenario, but I mean, you don't need 30 different versions of Monopoly if you're not a collector. There's probably
sure,
one that
right.
you like to play, or two, or or Risk. Maybe you bought Risk Legacy, you've got Risk Lord of the Rings, and you've got the original Risk game. Are you really playing all three of those, or is there one that's really what you want? Or it
I
doesn't
mean,
even
I
have to
can
be the same
see
game, right?
Right. I mean, I can see Legacy being, because it's very different. Risk Legacy is a very different style game than the rest of the Risks. I could see having like a regular Risk and a Risk Legacy
Mm-hmm.
potentially, just myself personally. But yeah, that is the question. And you're very right. Also, it doesn't have to be just different versions of Risk. It could be two versions of a same sort of style of game. You know what I
Right,
mean?
like maybe you've got a strategic World War II game like Axis and Allies, but there's also I'm trying to think of some other ones that are,
Hmm.
but or you've got some worker placements. Maybe that you bought one was the one that you originally played, and then you got a newer one because you like that style of game, and now you really only play the newer one.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a case of it depends on what feels right for you. Like if you get to the point where you're like, I need to start to pare back, or
Hmm.
prune my list a little bit of games, then it comes down to starting to ask yourself these questions. If we're not telling you, look, you don't need two worker placement games because they're basically the same. That's obviously not the case usually. But if you're looking at, I have all of these worker placement games, you could kind of categorize and say, I have all this type of game, I have all this type of game, I have all this type of game, and then start to sit down and look at it and go, okay, like, why do I have this many of this type of game? Are they actually that different? You know what I mean? And that
Right.
kind of gets into one of our next points, which is really about, well, when was the last time you played it? That's really
Right.
kind of important in gaming,
Yeah.
specifically board gaming.
Yeah, a good tip I heard, I believe it might even been from Dice Tower, is to if you don't want to do outside the game, like have a game log on your phone or whatever when you play the game, is just to take a piece of notebook paper, and then write the last time you played it. Every time you played the game, put the next date, almost like the check in check out cards that used to be for library books.
Sure, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and then now you can go, well, when's the last time I played this game? You can open up and go, oh, I haven't played this game in 5 years. Yeah, I probably don't need to keep this around.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're trying to figure out who makes the cut and who doesn't, being able to go through some of them, and sometimes like size is a concern. Like this is a really big box. When was the last time I actually played this game? You
Right,
open it
like
up,
you're
look at the piece of paper inside, be like, wow, it's been 3 years since I played this giant box.
yeah,
Maybe if
yeah, like
space is a concern, I need to
uh,
start looking someplace
yeah,
else.
like Adam's talked about ogre a few times. I mean, there's a difference between
Right.
getting rid of ogre and getting rid of a play deck size game. You could probably
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
hold on to the smaller game longer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would. For me, ogre is for me number one. I don't store a lot of board games, so that's an issue. I don't, so I can do that. But the other thing is that ogre, I haven't played it in a long time. Admittedly, there's a nostalgia thing. On the other hand, I don't know anybody who would take it necessarily, like
Mm,
locally. Like I don't know if
yeah,
it'll fit in my car. Well, maybe it probably would, but it's very big. It's a very very big box, and so yeah, but when you're looking at those things, being able to kind of start deciding where you're going to make the cut, where you're not, the big deal very frequently is at least step one. When was the last time you played it? If it's a game you play quite frequently, well, then obviously you wouldn't get rid of it. I
right,
mean, that
right,
wouldn't make
exactly.
sense unless you needed a new version or there was a new version or something like that. But then you might want to look at selling this one and then buying a new one. But it's hard to say. Generally, if it's a game you haven't played in quite some time, a couple years, and you're looking to either clear up space or make a little bit of money or something like that, whatever your need is, then that's probably at least step one on trying to figure out who makes the cut. Um, we've also got a situation of that things change. People
Mhm.
get older, i.e.,
Right.
like your kids. If you've got a
Yeah.
bunch of
Yep.
kids games and now they're older and don't like those kids games, do
Right.
you need to keep sitting on them?
And we've talked about a lot of like gateway games. Maybe you had a lot of
Hmm.
gateway games because your spouse or kids were starting to get into a genre, and now they have advanced, and now you guys are playing more of the hardcore games. Well, do you really still need those gateway games all the time?
Exactly. You're right. Yeah. If you basically got into a game because it was a stepping stone to the next type of game or whatever, and now you're playing that next type of game, do you still need the stepping stone anymore? That's the question. I mean, I guess it depends on if you're going to try to teach it to new players, new friends, things like that. You could do that. But generally, for the most part, it is a situation of like once you've kind of made that step, then this game becomes a little bit less necessary for you to keep in your selection, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Um,
how do you sell these games, Adam?
yeah. Well, that's a good
If
question. I
if
mean,
you are
you've
looking for money, I mean, because most of the time we're probably not going to want to, unless they're in really bad shape, we're not going to just throw them out.
no, that's true. I mean, even if you're not looking for money, I would tell you to maybe still. Well, I mean, there's a lot of different options. Like if you're not looking to make any money on them, you just don't want it around anymore. I would look at either maybe donating it potentially to like it depends on the game, obviously, but you could donate something like if it was a situation like we were just talking about where your kids got older and they're
Mm-hmm.
not interested in those games anymore, then you could donate them to like your local boys and girls club or something like that. You
Libraries,
could
friends and
yeah, potentially
relatives,
libraries, yeah, friends and relatives if you've got younger
coworkers.
kids. Yep, absolutely, all that kind of stuff. So that's a good potential way to do it. Um, if you are looking to try to sell the game and make some money that way, then you could definitely do that. Um, there are some easier ways to do it to some degree. Maybe right now it's a little harder to take it to your friendly local game store. Some friendly local game stores have consignment like
Yeah,
sales areas where you can bring in a game and then they like look it over with you and stuff to make sure the parts are all
right.
there and
And
whatnot. And then they
and ask them how they do it, because
right.
some will, like, they'll make you verify, some they'll verify that stuff is there. Um, you know, some have full descriptions, some are just
Hmm.
it's as is, so you buy it and it's your choice.
Yeah.
And then,
There's a
how do you get the money? Is it, do you keep all of it, or do you keep a percentage, or is it a store credit? A lot of times you'll get like 100% of it store credit, because then they're still making their money when you buy it, because I mean they're using some of their store, you know,
resources.
resources, their rental and
Yeah.
their advertising to get people in there. So,
Hmm. Yeah. Like I sat in a seminar a couple years back by a real smart guy who owns store or maybe 2 stores now in the Madison, Wisconsin area. I'm Bored, Hobbies and Games or something like that. I know it's I'm Bored. I can't remember the last part. I don't know if it's Hobbies and Games or just Game Store or something like that. His name is Brian. He's a real nice guy and very smart. And he did a seminar about how they sell used games on consignment at their shop. And a lot of people, you could see like the retailers in this seminar that I was sitting at, like taking copious notes because they were like, this is a super good idea. And I think it's a great idea for your friendly local game stores to be able to do that because it gets people into the store. It gets there's a lot of stuff going on there. So check with your local stores to see if they do that. That's probably step one. It's not a bad way to do it. You're going to get some store credit and things like that, which you can then use to turn into games that you want to play, or maybe some hobby supplies, or you want to try out something different, or whatever. Another way to do it is a potentially Facebook Marketplace, and Facebook Marketplace is it's pretty local. It's kind of like Craigslist, but a little bit slightly easier to maybe navigate sometimes, although it is Facebook, so who's to say? And it's a little bit almost like a rummage sale or a yard sale or whatever they call them overseas. It's you basically just sort of skim through the stuff in your area, and you might see someone might see that that copy of Twilight Imperium that you haven't played in 3 years, and they'd be like, yeah, I want that, Right. And so generally in those situations, if you're close enough to each other, you figure out someplace, like you get together at the McDonald's parking lot, and then they give you the money and you give them the game and that kind of thing. So you're not having to worry about shipping and that kind of jazz. Which is nice for bigger games. Like if I was trying to get rid of Ogre 6th edition, because that box is so big, I would not want to ship it. It was 27 pounds.
No, all your margin would go right to back to shipping.
Exactly. So there's that too. But again, like I said, right now, specifically, if you're listening to this in early April, it's not the greatest time to be doing that kind of stuff right now. Another option, again, if shipping is something that you can still do pretty easily, then I would definitely look at eBay.
Right.
Obviously, like as a person who works predominantly in miniatures and stuff like that, like eBay is big for miniatures because they're kind of small and not that hard to ship.
Right. These are ship volumes. Lots of stuff to look for. People are kind of used to being the whole interaction of you don't really have to teach people how eBay works. They're usually, once they're on eBay, they kind of know how it's all going to work, and that they're not getting maybe a pristine value thing, or so
no, absolutely. I mean, eBay's been around long enough that the people that are generally using it have a pretty good idea what's going on and what to expect, so it's not a bad idea that way. One trick that I think a lot of people don't know about when you're trying to figure out how much should I sell it for? Right. The way to do it is to not just type in, let's say you're trying to sell, I don't know, Settlers of Catan. Yep. So you type Settlers of Catan in there and you start looking at people who are selling the box.
You raise it.
Right. Well, the thing is that so many of the prices, like it might be a buy it now, it might not, it might be an auction and it's an opening bid, and there's all kinds of different options. And the trick is that just because somebody puts down a copy of a game that you own, that they want to sell it for $200, does not mean that they're going to get $200, right, or that you're going to get $200. They might just be crazy. You know what I mean? Like these things happen. So what happens, the best way to do it is that in eBay, when you do a search, there's a thing called filters. Usually, I think it's in the upper right-hand corner. It might be different on mobile, but on the web, I think it's in the upper right-hand corner. But it's somewhere in the upper part, and it allows you to filter the search results. What you want to look for is filtering the search results by completed results, completed sales. And then what that'll do is it will tell you what this thing that you're trying to sell actually sold for to other people previously. So you can look at it and go, oh, well, this one guy is selling it for $200 starting bid, but it turns out that pretty much everyone else who's ever sold it has only been selling it for $40. Like that's right. The actual, and then having that information to where it shows you the completed auctions, that really helps you to determine where you want to price it, how you want to expect it.
I like
and there's a lot of different options.
Yeah, I like looking at it too for conditions too. Like where you can go, well, is this considered excellent condition? And you go look, you're like, oh yeah, everyone that's completed and sold it, mine's about the same as what they're marking that for, or mine's way better than what they're putting theirs as average. Mine's, I can put mine
exactly.
So
doing a bit of research on that kind of stuff to try to figure out, what other completed auctions have happened and how it's worked out. And the thing is, we'll also show you completed auctions that didn't sell, so you can kind of see that as well. Like there's a filter for like just seeing what's sold, but there's also one for completed auctions that'll show you like.
Yeah.
There'll be finished auctions and it will show you like if the price is in green, that's mean it's what it's sold for, and if the price is like in red, that means it didn't sell for this price. And it's really interesting like how deep you can get into the data. But when you're looking to try to sell stuff and you don't know what price it should sell for, just even if you weren't going to sell it, like if you were going to sell it to like let's say Facebook Marketplace, but you're like, I don't even know how much I should market for, go look on eBay and then see what it sells for on eBay. And then that would help you to go, okay, well, I'll sell this for $10 because it sells for generally between $7 and $12 on eBay, and, plus shipping. And this way they don't have to ship it. And so, that kind of thing. It really helps you. It's almost like a Kelly Blue Book, but instead of for cars, for like, I don't know,
That's
basically anything really,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really nice feature to have with eBay if you are looking to do some selling and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
When do you decide generally to not sell something?
Yeah, this
you're
is
looking
tough.
at like what's like we talked about like picking like who makes the cut. Like what
Right.
when do you definitely have to make sure this makes
Yeah,
the
because
cut?
there's nothing worse than like, 3 months from now going, I shouldn't have gotten rid of that. What is it where does that seller's remorse come in?
Yeah,
For
exactly.
me, like nostalgia. If there's some kind of nostalgia behind it, and I mean like something that's going to trigger nostalgia later. Like I still have a couple of my old second edition Dungeons and Dragons books. Am I going to use them again? No, but I love looking through them. But there might be some games that you don't play that often, but man, it was really fun when you did play that, and maybe your group of friends, will get back together in a couple of years and you'll play it again. So you're gonna keep that copy of Axis and Allies hanging around for a little bit longer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and sometimes like just because a new version of a game comes out doesn't mean you need to jump on it necessarily. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
sometimes the newer ones they aren't better. Sometimes they tweaked rules and they got it wrong.
Well, and again, that's personal preference. But if
Right.
you and your group still like playing, I don't know, third edition Twilight Imperium, and you get together twice a year to do it at such and such small little local convention, or Bob's
Right.
house on his birthday or whatever, and you spend 6 hours playing it, and you don't want to go out and get the new one, whatever version. I don't know, are they on fourth or fifth edition
I
right now?
thought they
I don't
were
remember.
fifth.
Yeah, I think you might be right. And so, you don't have to go out and do it. If you're interested in trying out the new thing and you've read about it online and you say, well, it sounds like they streamlined this and they changed this and they added this, then go for it. But just because, somebody came along and, decided to make a new one, it's not necessarily the reason to jump right out and go at it.
I've even heard of some people Frankensteining like versions. Like they'll like take the old pieces, that still are compatible and keep those around for nostalgic purposes. But then
Yeah.
they get some of the newer features, for that. So
Yeah, I could
that's
see
an
that.
option too.
Absolutely.
And then
Yeah.
also understand like maybe like why are you not using it? Like, oh yeah, I haven't played this game in a couple of years. Well, that's because like my Ticket to Ride. I'm not getting rid of my Ticket to Ride because even though my family doesn't play very often, it's one of the ones that people seem to like when my extended family gets together for holidays at my
Sure.
house. So maybe I only have Christmas at my house every 3 years. So yeah, it's going to be maybe every 3 or 6 years between playing it. But if I get rid of that and then
And
the
then
next
everybody
time I
shows up
host
and
and
they're
they're
like,
like, "Hey,
hey,
hey, do you still have that game?" And they'll go, "No, I got rid of that." That kind of stinks. Or
yeah.
maybe there's games that people weren't in the right mindset for when you first tried them. Like your kids weren't old enough to really appreciate it, or your spouse didn't really like those type of games. But she's starting to like some of the gateway games into that genre. So maybe keep it
So now their
around.
mind has changed.
Yeah, so maybe it's not something you've played, but maybe it's something you're still thinking might come out later.
Yeah, that very well could be. That very well could be. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why you decide to go through your game collection, and not just your game collection. Like me as a person who's into the hobby stuff, like my stuff takes up a good amount of space as well. Maybe not as much as like a big, huge board game collection. And the folks who play, RPGs, those books are generally pretty skinny, but you can still end up with a whole bunch of them,
Yep.
Especially if you become kind of a collector. And same with Magic cards and Pokemon cards and collectible card games in general. Those can also take up an amazing amount of space, but it's all relative to different types of the genre and the sizes. When if you need money because you need money for whatever, then that's one thing. And I think that keeping track of your board games, keeping them in good condition, or whatever types of games it's a good thing, because you can then generally, sell them, hopefully. And you could do this with, I suppose, video games. There's a lot of things you can sell if you need to. But if you're basically doing it more of I just need to pare down my collection. I need to make more space. I need to not have so many things, kind of like that. What's that, Marie Kondo on Netflix? The organization lady.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what you're trying to go for. Exactly. If that's the case, then great. Then definitely start going through. But then, keep in mind, does it bring you joy? When was the last time that it did bring you joy?
Right.
Well, according to the sheet in here, we haven't played this since 2016. Well, then maybe it's time to go. But maybe it's a thing you play at Christmas. So you have to take a look at those things and kind of decide what you want to do. But you don't try real hard not to die under a pile of board games or RPG books that fell off a shelf.
Yes.
You do want to not become a hoarder generally. And I, say this having a basement full of miniatures, but it is important to kind of take a look at these things and to think about them critically, and to look at each, rather than just going through and grabbing just armfuls of games and throwing them on eBay. Look at them and then throw some on eBay, or however you're going to do it.
Yeah, or maybe put them on eBay for $5,000, because then you can tell that person that told you to get rid of your games that you at least try to sell
them. Sure, exactly.
I've always
I put it on
that.
eBay. I put it on eBay.
I put it on eBay. Just nobody's looking for that. Right
Nobody
now.
was willing to pull. Yeah. That's another reason to use the completed auctions things. You can see what's too much, and then you can put it up for too much. I guess that's another way to look at it. Sure. I don't know that it's the way I suggest, but it is an option.
Life hack.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player or just aren't into the whole YouTube comment section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@iamgamefor.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, technically TikTok. We haven't posted anything since the virus. Lastly, to find out more about the GameFor platform designed to connect tabletop gamers, please check out our website at www.iamgamefor.com. That is www.iamgamefor.com. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.